Hello, crypto community. Jeff Kardakis here to talk about a project that has been leading the pack in the crypto space. They're up over 4x, 400% in the last 3.5 months. They've gone from $6 all the way up to $25. This is Binance. This rise in price certainly has not been unsubstantiated at all. In the last month, they've released their Binance Decentralized Exchange. And on April 18th, they released Binance Chain. So at face value, these are two things that are absolutely massive. They are huge developments and massive catalysts to propel their price upwards. However, if you dig a little bit under the surface, you can see that there actually may be some issues with both the Binance DEX and the Binance Chain. People say it's the Ethereum killer. Is it really? Let's dive into that right now. So first off, they're marketing Binance Chain as a faster and less expensive way to transfer tokenized assets. So if we look at Ethereum, Ethereum currently does 20 transactions per second. Binance Chain, on the other hand, does over 1,000 transactions per second and at a much less expensive rate. Binance is pushing for developers to move from Ethereum onto Binance Chain for them to be able to transition their tokens onto Binance Chain, and they're offering them preferential treatment in regards to listing on Binance. As a project developer or even a community member involved with the project, that is something that you definitely want to see. Binance is the leader in the pack by far in terms of exchanges, so being in the preferential treatment area of Binance is something that pretty much every project and every investor wants to see. In fact, some projects have already transferred over to Binance Chain, Mithril being one of them. As soon as they announced they were transitioning over to Binance Chain, they went up 60% in 24 hours. So the market is speaking, and when projects are moving onto Binance Chain, there's a massive amount of hype behind them. Will this hype last and will it stay forever? That is certainly up for debate. As we all know, hype comes and hype goes. So a common misconception is that Binance Chain could be an Ethereum killer. However, the thing is that Binance does not actually support smart contract functionality, which is a key aspect for Ethereum. Now, it's true that a very widely used case for Ethereum is simply fundraising, so Binance Chain could certainly take a chunk out of that aspect of Ethereum. Binance Chain does not infringe, though, on the true ethos of Ethereum, so this being an Ethereum killer statement is definitely misguided. So you're thinking, that's fine, my project does not need smart contract functionality anyways, all I want to do is to be listed on Binance. They give people who swap over to their chain preferential treatment for listing, and so they say. However, this is not actually the case. When I personally reached out to Binance about swapping an ERC20 token over to the Binance Chain, their liaison affirmed that the guarantee of listing is actually non-existent. I also came to discover that the preferential treatment actually does not give the project any significant advantage in priority of listing, or for anything at all for that matter. And to simply list a token on Binance Chain to issue the asset costs an astronomical amount, in fact a lot more than on the Ethereum chain, and to list on the Binance DEX costs even more. So this is not the first time that Binance has pulled a bait and switch kind of thing with the way that they're phrasing their listing agreements. On two separate occasions, when both Digibyte and Elastos won the Binance community vote, they were then asked to pay a $1 million listing fee. Of course, when they declined, the community vote had to be funded by the community in the form of BNB tokens that totaled over $150,000. So when the standard listing fee for Binance is $1 million anyways. So when they asked these projects who won the community vote to pay the $1 million, what were they even winning? And when they declined, they never paid back the $150,000 that the community gave to vote their projects in. So what is really happening here? It looks more so like Binance is trying to just siphon or extort money from the community in these vote formats, because in reality, there is no benefit for projects to go through this community vote process when the listing fee is going to be the same anyways. And if you're going through a community vote process, you can guarantee that these projects do not have the funds available to pay for $1 million listing fee, because if they did, they would have done it right at the start and avoided the massive hassle of trying to rally their entire community together to try to go for this one unified vote. It is not easy to win a community vote on Binance. So Binance is definitely not the cleanest cat in the litter by any regards. Without going too much in depth, another example of what's happened super recently on Binance, if you've seen any news in the last 2 months, they tried to extort some information from the company called Blocknet, which is a competitor decentralized exchange that we're trying to list on Binance. The questionnaire that Binance sent to them was absolutely far over and above any questionnaire form that any other project has had to fill out. They were kind of digging at Blocknet for any information that they could get to solve their own problems. And then they never listed Blocknet anyways. In fact, they never even replied to their email after they gave this massive response on how they were dealing with certain technical issues. So Binance was just using their position of power to extort information from Blocknet. And I understand a lot of people would say, hey, it's up to Blocknet to decide whether they do or do not want to release that information. However, let's be real here. Binance is in a position of power and hold the cards. Blocknet wants to get listed. They want to build their community, and of course they want to get listed on Binance. Binance is Goliath. And so they position themselves strategically in the sheer name of profit and competitive advantage to undermine the Blocknet project so that they could build their own project up. So if you're looking at a pure profit capitalism business play, great move, Binance. But if you're looking at something that's a little more earthy or wholehearted, that is definitely not Binance in any stretch. And we're going to dive into a few other examples here. Let's get going. So the next point that I have an issue with is the Binance decentralized exchange. So first we talked about Binance Chain briefly here and how it's actually not a threat to Ethereum in the least, just maybe this little aspect here. It doesn't run smart contracts. The other side that I want to start talking about now is the Binance not so decentralized exchange. They're marketing this as a decentralized exchange. And just to give a breakdown for anyone who's not familiar with decentralized exchanges and what these mean versus centralized exchanges, centralized exchanges, they take fees, there's one main server, and they're a for-profit company run by a CEO and a corporate structure and potentially have shareholders, which Binance definitely does. Pure decentralized exchanges operate for next to no trading fees, and they don't have a corporate structure. They're totally on a distributed network, and they do not have a single point of failure. There's no profitability. It's simply a network supported by the community. So on a various and varying amount of levels, decentralized exchanges are the next upcoming thing, and for very obvious reasons, they could take a massive piece away from the Binance pie. However, right now, a lot of these decentralized exchanges are still very embryonic. They don't have VC funding, so their user interface isn't as sleek and sexy as Binance, or they're still growing and evolving and getting their act together. So Binance is in a peculiar position right now where they can either hop on the decentralized exchange train or within 2 to 3 years, become a thing of the past, just very much like Bittrex and Poloniex has. Now, I think a huge misconception is that Binance will always be the best, always be the best. That's just how it's been for the last maybe year and a half, 2 years, not exactly sure the timeline here, but it is not the Goliath that we've seen since 2009, not a chance. Exchanges come and exchanges go, and for Binance to be able to stay on top, they need to be cutting edge. So what do? They launch a decentralized exchange. But here's where it gets interesting. The Binance decentralized exchange is actually not a decentralized exchange at all, and I cannot stress this enough. Binance, the way that the transactions are going to be verified on this exchange is through a series of 11 validator nodes. So these nodes verify the transactions, yada, yada, yada. Here's the catch. These validator nodes are all run by Binance. Now, Binance says that they are going to eventually, over time, allow for some of these validator nodes to be run by the community through delegated proof of stake, where the community can vote on who they want to run these validator nodes. Seems like it makes a lot of sense. And again, it's a very great marketing tactic, kind of this political answer. You're like, oh no, here's what we're going to do. Don't worry about it. But here's the thing. when you vote in delegated proof of stake, it's the number of tokens that are used to vote that determine who the delegates are. So who has the most tokens? Binance. Binance holds 50% of all BNB tokens. The next 3 addresses on Etherscan hold an additional 17%, very likely investors in Binance who have the sole interest in profit. They do not care about decentralization. They care about their pocketbooks, just like Binance does. So we have 67% of the tokens at least that are allocated for the pure profit play. And you can bet your bottom dollar that they are going to be voting for their own centralized nodes to continue running the system. So this is not going to be a distributed, decentralized exchange in the least. This is going to remain centralized with this pseudo decentralization kind of cover over it that Binance is placing. And so there are many other reasons why this is not a decentralized exchange. Let's dive in. When you look at a decentralized exchange, you don't pay listing fees. You just list your token. The Binance decentralized exchange is so profit heavy, it's actually laughable. Let's break down all the ways that the Binance DEX pulls some profit. So first off, we have trading fees, 0.1%, and if you're using BNB, 0.4%. Not that bad, but certainly not a DEX. But let's get into the real crazy stuff here. A listing fee on the Binance decentralized exchange is 10,000 BNB. So recently the price has been around $25 per Binance token. That means to list your token on a decentralized exchange, it's going to cost you $250,000. You want to issue an asset on Binance? You want to issue a token? 2,000 BNB, 50 grand. You want to mint that asset? I'm not even sure what the distinction is between them, but it's an extra 200 BNB, 5 grand. So total, if you want to issue, mint, and list your asset on the Binance chain, right now, you are paying over $300,000. The only reason that I can see that a project would want to list on the Binance DEX is because they simply can't afford Binance's $1 million listing fee, and so they go with an option that's a third the price. So this DEX, in my opinion, is just going to be a haven for what we call budget coins. So if you're looking for a decentralized platform, the Binance DEX is certainly not for you. However, if you're looking for a quick fundraise, then it may be viable to use Binance Chain, although issuing an asset costs about 50 times more to issue on Binance Chain than it does on Ethereum. So Binance is currently the leader by a mile, and I anticipate that their price could keep increasing as more simple projects and fundraisers transition over to the chain to simply ride the hype. So will Binance be the leader in 2 years? Time will tell. Personally, I'm looking forward to the inevitable time when a true decentralized exchange comes in and takes center stage. So that being said, I'm grateful for what Binance has done for the crypto space, as they are a phenomenal centralized for-profit exchange, especially with their move recently on the scam to delist Bitcoin Satoshi's vision. You know, what they do well, and they make a lot of traders' lives easier with an amazing UI, easy trading. CZ is a champion of the crypto space, there's no doubt about that. However, the masquerade, the borderline extortion, and the half-truths that Binance has been feeding us as of late are the start of a slippery slope. It would be great to see Binance start making future moves towards integrity rather than profit, but being a for-profit corporation, I feel that's highly unlikely. So on April 23rd, BNB is swapping their ERC20 token over to the mainnet Binance token. So if you hold BNB, all you have to do is deposit BNB onto Binance, and then when you withdraw, it's converted to the main chain token automatically. So thanks guys for checking in on this quick overview of what's really going on with Binance Chain. Are you still on the hype train? Has your opinion changed? Give me your thoughts. Let me know your comments. Where's Binance going? Is this going to be the leader in 5 years, or are we going to see a DEX hopefully emerge to the top? Let me know. Have a great day.